Hi, welcome to Audiobook Academy. This is a self-paced audiobook. There's no need to keep an eye on things. Just pay attention. Thank you for taking the time to listen. This is a book summary of Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. No matter what your beliefs are, I challenge you to challenge the fundamental narratives of our world, to connect past developments with current concerns and to not be afraid of controversial issues. Yuval Noah Harari. Sapiens explores how humans rose from relative obscurity to global dominance. Human evolution has been traced by Yuval Noah Harari in a fascinating and contemporary way. We'll look at a few of the most important points from the book and learn how Homo sapiens became the dominant species on the planet. We'll learn a little about our species past by following the three major revolutions: the cognitive revolution, the agricultural revolution, and the scientific revolution. Since then, the fundamental features of our universe have been in existence. The Big Bang is a phenomenon that we learn about in physics. After some 300,000 years of matter, energy, time, and space, things began to develop and evolve. There is a relationship between matter and energy known as atoms, and these atoms form molecules. Chemistry teaches us about these topics, and it took a long time to move on from them. It was 3.8 billion years ago that molecules on Earth began to do some amazing things. They began to construct what biologists call organisms, which are more complex still. Things got even more exciting and complex some 70,000 years ago when organisms began to form Homo sapiens. We learn about these things in biology. What we call cultures are the result of human evolution. History teaches us about these. Revolutions are another topic covered in history. There are three revolutionary events that Sapiens doesn't cover that you may have learned about in school or university: the scientific revolution, the agricultural revolution, and the cognitive revolution. A few hundred years ago, when humans first appeared, they weren't particularly notable. They lived in harmony with the natural world, behaving in much the same way as the animals and other organisms they encountered. There was nothing special about humans, says Harari. Before we get into how we became unique and special, we need to look at a few helpful definitions. Atoms, molecules, and organisms are all made up of a combination of matter and energy. If we tend to mate with each other and produce fertile offspring, we are members of the same species. Using horses and donkeys as a case study, because donkeys and horses, despite their shared characteristics, are not of the same species, their offspring, a mule, is sterile when they do very rarely mate. In contrast, dogs of different breeds can interbreed because they are all members of the same species. The offspring of two different breeds of dog may look a little out of the ordinary, but they will be fertile. Humans are classified as Homo sapiens because we share our common ancestor with the other members of our species. It is possible to trace the lineage of humans back to the great apes. Harari claims that 6 million years ago, a female ape gave birth to two offspring, which is our closest evolutionary cousin to the chimp. Homo sapiens has been in charge of the world for the past 10,000 years because we are the only species that has ever existed. Although this is where things get interesting, there have been numerous other Homo species before Homo sapiens. It's interesting to note that, for those of us who have studied human evolution in museums or textbooks, we tend to think of things as moving in a linear fashion and that humans have evolved from one species to the next. This is what we've discovered. There have been multiple species of the genus coexisting in East Africa about 2.5 million years ago. In the course of their migrations, they changed and adapted to suit their new environments. When it comes to Western Eurasia, Homo neanderthalensis was able to withstand the harsh conditions because of their sturdy and muscular build. Homo erectus, the most hardy of all human species, lived for 2 million years in East Asia and occupied the region. Homo Floresiensis, a diminutive human species, appeared as a result of the lower food requirements of the diminutive human species. Many of them coexisted despite the enormous differences between the various species despite the overarching fact that they were all humans. When was the last time you asked yourself why only we are endowed with such a magnificently enormous intellect? Even in the face of our own high intelligence, we assume that more is better, Harari quipped in a jovial tone. There are many reasons why we don't see cats and frogs doing calculus, but if this were the case we'd already be seeing cats and frogs in space. The drawback to having a large brain is that it requires a large amount of energy to maintain. At rest, the Homo sapien brain consumes 25% of the body's energy, but it only makes up 3% of our total weight. In the wild, our brains are of little use. Although we now have the advantage when it comes to being apex predators because of our ingenious technological solutions in the areas of weapons, transportation, food preservation, and so on. While our brains have been evolving for 2 million years, we haven't done much with them other than create a few tools with them. Being able to stand on our own 2 feet was a huge step forward, as was mastering the fine motor skills necessary to create more sophisticated tools. Walking upright has its drawbacks. Humans have gone through a lot of natural selection in order to get to where they are today. In the beginning, we weren't at the top of our game. In actuality, we were in the middle of the pack. So, what prompted our ascent to the pinnacle of the trophic pyramid? A common argument against human species' rapid ascent is that it left our ecosystem no time to adjust. Slower evolving apex predators influenced the evolution of their environment. When it came to the rise of Homo sapiens, the ecosystem had no time to adapt. There are 2 schools of thought here. Why did Homo sapiens triumph over all other species in the struggle for human existence? There are 2 possible explanations for this phenomenon. Only a small portion of Africa was occupied by Homo sapiens about 150,000 years ago. Then, about 70,000 years ago, they started to move. In the long run, as they spread out across the globe, the number of other human species began to decline. There has been a lot of debate about why this is the case. Interbreeding is the most likely explanation. Interbreeding between humans of the African ancestry and those of the present day is the underlying assumption. Neanderthals make up a large portion of Eurasians, while Chinese and Koreans are a mixture of Sapien and Erectus. Replacement theory, on the other hand, claims the population groups did not interbreed and did not interbreed with each other. Some people believe that different human species may have even engaged in warfare with one another at one point in time. Sapiens prevailed in the end, so if replacement theory is to be believed, we are all descended from pure sapiens. It's not hard to see why these 2 theories have so many ideological disagreements. First of all, there's a veritable hotbed of racial discourse that could be used to fuel political and social tactics if we follow the first theory. Many mysteries remain about why Homo sapiens is the only surviving human species, and we're just beginning to piece together some of the puzzle pieces. In what ways did we have an advantage in terms of our own survival? According to Harari, this is a matter of semantics, and it all boils down to language. It is said that the unique language of Homo sapiens has enabled us to conquer the world. Unlike other species, humans can tell stories that go deeper than a simple account of what happened at the time. In order to convince others to invest in our narratives, we have the ability to persuade them. Telling good stories is not easy, says Harari. Making people believe the story is more difficult than telling it. History revolves around this fundamental question: how do you persuade millions of people to believe in stories about gods, or countries, or limited liability companies? The importance of conveying the abstract cannot be understated. Religion was a key factor in developing language because it helped people connect and work together around a common belief. It is now time to take a closer look at some of the factors that helped Homo sapiens become world rulers. We were able to do things because of the power of fire. What was the mechanism by which fire provided us with energy? At least 300,000 years ago, people were cooking with fire on a regular basis. Using fire as a source of light, warmth, and safety from predators was a necessity for early humans. Foods that would have been inedible without the use of fire became available to us. Food undergoes a chemical and biological transformation when it is burned. Several foods must be cooked to remove harmful bacteria and parasites before they can be consumed. Cooked food, on the other hand, is much quicker to eat. The domestication of fire marked a turning point in human evolution because it allowed for the evolution of the human body. We were able to use power to our advantage, and it became a source of heat, a source of power, and a weapon in our arsenal. Farming has made us hungry for more. Farming and agriculture are unlikely topics of conversation unless you happen to be one yourself. Almost all early Homo sapiens lived in nomadic communities that moved around in response to changes in the availability of food sources. The world's population was less than Cairo's before the agricultural revolution. Since the dawn of time, we've lived as a hunter-gatherer species. It was only about 10,000 years ago that humans began to alter the natural world by cultivating crops and raising livestock. So was born the agricultural revolution. Sapiens developed the skill of food preservation in areas where food was abundant. Food security was not the only concern for humans, they were also interested in plants and territories because of their thirst for knowledge. Homo sapiens foragers may have had a larger brain than we do because they were so knowledgeable about the environment. Ancient foragers may have been the most knowledgeable and skillful people in history, according to Harari, who claims that when industry and agriculture exploded onto the scene, experts emerged and new niches for imbeciles opened up. When it came to food, foragers were more diverse than farmers. This meant that the average pre-modern Chinese farmer would eat a meal of rice for breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. Agriculture also brought with it a large number of infectious diseases transmitted by domesticated animals. As a result, the world's population of domesticated animals has exploded, and most of those animals don't have the best of lives. As far as Harari is concerned, it is one of the most controversial events in history. Some argue that it paved the way for a better future for humanity. Whatever your opinion, farming and agriculture changed the way humans, plants, and animals lived on the planet. At this time sapiens cast off their intimacy with nature and sped towards greed and alienation, a turning point in human evolution. Money gave us a reason to exist. Agriculture shifted our perspective on the passage of time. Hunter-gatherers have an instinct for finding their next meal, but they don't worry about the long-term viability of crops or what the following year will bring. Having all of your eggs in one basket is really the only way to go about it. Farmers' surplus led to the rise of new civilizations. Farmer-to-consumer networks would be established, and so on. What remains to be seen, however, is how and who is in charge of these systems. Land and power disputes would inevitably lead to wars and other violent episodes. Most human cooperation networks have been tailored towards oppression and exploitation, writes Yuval Noah Harari. These imagined orders, as Harari calls them, are built around stories, ideologies, and myths that the peasants paid for out of their precious surplus food. They were devastated when the imperial tax collector erased an entire year's worth of hard work with one stroke of his imperial pen. We get our desires, needs, aspirations, and experiences from our imagined orders of things. Shiny, bright, and new things appear to have a natural lure for humans. Were they enthralled by this shiny yellow metal known as gold when Hernán Cortés invaded Mexico? Despite the fact that the Aztecs traded cocoa and cloth, the conquistadors wanted nothing but gold. It didn't take long for the craze to spread, and soon everybody wanted more and more gold. But first, a diversion. During the agricultural revolution, towns and villages began to specialize in particular products as civilizations began to emerge. A wide variety of crops and specialties developed over time in different regions due to variations in the local environment. The art of bartering and trading had a relatively simple beginning, but as time went on, it became increasingly difficult. How many apples do you need to trade for a new pair of boots if you're an apple farmer? Is the person who makes the shoes even looking for a ton of apples? The answer was to create money. To return to our earlier point, the concept of money and currency is based on the concept of shared imagination, and it has nothing to do with physical coins and paper. A coin's worth of value is denoted by its symbolism. Inmates, for example, trade cigarettes for money. Many inmates don't smoke, but they use cigarettes as a means of bartering for other goods. As if that wasn't bad enough, most money doesn't exist at all. It's nothing more than a random number on a computer screen, housed in a server. As a psychological construct, money is one of sapiens' most important drivers. Because of science, we've become more lethal than ever before. New and important scientific discoveries are being made every year, and the world is constantly evolving. There has been an unprecedented rise in human power over the past 500 years, Harari says. There were approximately 500 million people in the world in 1500. At present, there are 7 billion people on the planet. Scientific progress and the desire of individuals and groups to broaden their horizons coincided with the rise in population. The first atomic bomb was detonated in New Mexico in 1945, giving us the ability to wipe out the planet. This discovery would revolutionize warfare. During the Apollo 11 mission in 1969, we became the first people to set foot on the lunar surface. While science has always played an important role in society, it has also played a significant role in the scientific revolution. Imperialism and capitalism are inextricably linked to science. As a society, we need to exercise caution in our relationship with science. All of our problems will be solved by this technology. Ads and sales pitches for new technologies are often filled with exuberant claims about how wonderful the new gadgets are. With great power comes great responsibility, and many of the disasters we've encountered have been due to scientific errors or oversights, as we've learned. Scientific endeavors are also time-consuming and costly. However, science is at the heart of many of our hopes and aspirations. If we want something, we can either invent it ourselves or purchase it from another source. As a society, we believe that technology and science can save us from whatever ailment we may be facing. But at what price? Is it just a collective belief that we're happier? Finally, I'd like to say, I highly recommend Sapiens to anyone who wants to learn more about human history. Educator Yuval Noah Harari is the kind of historian who could have taught us all in school. When it comes to comparing ancient societies foraging for food and feasting on the fruits of their labors, who better to do so than a modern human? We've come a long way, but we're still the same people we were before. While dining at the table, we've been told not to discuss matters of faith, religion, politics, sex, or money. Yuval Noah Harari demonstrates unequivocally that we shouldn't just talk about these topics, but rather dive headfirst into them. To put it another way, it's not always about being correct, rather, it's about getting us out of our comfort zones so that we can truly think about what it means to be sapien. Perhaps the most poignant questions are those pertaining to the price we've paid for our technological progress. With great power comes great responsibility and great pain. What if the ultimate price we must pay is our own contentment and joy? Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Please don't forget to subscribe for more content like this. See you in next audiobook.